just quickly go through what we learned last week. So firstly, we said when creating your HTML documents, you need, or when creating any project, you need to have a project folder where you can organize your project files, your images, your HTML content, and your CSS content. You need to have a project folder where you can, so you can stay organized, okay? So, and I also said that HTML is an acronym for Hypertext Markup Language, and is the basic language that we use to create the structure of our websites, okay? Or rather, of our web page, okay? So when creating your HTML documents, I said you need to use the doc type. That's the first thing you need to type on your code editor. We also talked about how to install our code editor, and I believe every one of us must have our code editor installed already. So I said when creating your HTML documents, you need to start with the document type. Remember, like there was a code I shared in the group, and I just asked everyone to like note the error or to comment, to mention the errors that were in the code, okay? And I noticed some persons forgot the doc type, because I believe in the code, I didn't start the doc type with this exclamation mark, okay? So you have to note that as well. You use the angle brackets followed by the exclamation mark, doc type, followed by the HTML. And one thing you should note is that HTML is not case sensitive. For instance, this doc type, you can decide to type it in capital letters, okay? Or you can decide to type it in lowercase, okay? That's correct as well, okay? So after the document type, what you need to open next, or what you need to write next, is your HTML tag. That's the opening of your HTML document, which is this, the HTML, and you close it immediately so you don't forget closing it. This is the closing tag of the HTML document, okay? So after that, I said the next thing we need to add in our HTML document. Hello, please, if your mic is not muted, please kindly mute your mic. Okay. So I said the next thing we need to add is the head tag, the opening and the closing of the head tag, followed by the body tag, the opening and the closing of the body tag, okay? So I said those contents that are not visible on our web page, they are being added to our in between our head tag, or they are being added in our head tag, okay? Content like the title of the page and also our CSS code, we can add it to inside our head tag, okay? Then why those content that are visible on the page, they are being added in the body tag, okay? So that's what we have done here. Right here inside our head tag, we've added the title tag. What this title tag does is that on the web page, if you open your web browser, you will see on that tab there where you close the tab, you see the title. That's where the title is being displayed. Like what we have here, you can see it right here. My first web page. That's the content that I've added inside our title tab. Okay. Then the other contents that are being visible on the page, they are added inside the body tag. Okay. So I believe that's clear. So we also talked about different type of HTML tags, and we made mention of the heading tags. And the heading tags are from heading 1 to heading 6, which is from H1 to H6. And the lesser the number, for instance, H1 is more like creating a big, when you want to write a big text or a more let me put it this way. If you want to write the heading, which is the primary or the main heading of your web page, you can use the H1. Okay. Then if you want to write subheading, you can either use the H2, H3, and so on. Okay. So H1 is used for headings, while the paragraph, which is the P tags, they are used for paragraphs. Okay. Like the body of our text. You know, I made mention of when you are writing a letter. I said, for instance, when you are writing a letter, on your letter, you normally have the heading or the title of that your letter. So you can use the H1 tag to, or the H2 tag to create that particular heading. Then the body of your letter, you can use the paragraph to do that. That's an example of the paragraph. We also talked about forms, where we talk about input elements. We talk about labels as well, and we talked about buttons. Okay, so input elements, they are used to receive input from the user. They are used to receive input from the user, just like the one we have here. Just like the one we have here. They are used to receive inputs from our users. Okay. Then the same as the radio input as well. They are used to get information from the user. Then the button as well. The button can be used to either send the information back to the server or the database. Okay. So basically, this is like an overview of what we talked about last time. So I don't know if anyone is still having any area you are not clear with. You can just let me know. You can maybe signify by raising up your hand in the meeting. Then you can unmute and ask your question before we proceed. Okay, I believe all is clear. Okay. So today we'll be going into CSS. Okay, we'll be going into CSS. And CSS, what does CSS really mean? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Okay, and it is what we use to beautify or to style our website. If you look at the web page we have currently on our screen, you see how it looks. It's just mainly black and white, okay, on our screen. It's just mainly black and white. But with the help of CSS, you'll be able to style that website. You'll be able to change the colors. You'll also be able to change the font size, which means you want to make some text big, you want to make some text small, you want to capitalize text, you'll be able to do that using CSS, okay? So CSS is mainly used to beautify or to style our websites, okay? And there are different ways we can use CSS to style our websites. But before we do that, I would like to introduce an extension that you can install on your VS Code. You can add that extension to your VS Code so that when you are, it makes your work easier. It's called a live server. You can add it to your VS Code. Just go to the extension tab, which is this, and you can see the extension here. It's called live server. What this extension does is that instead of you, oh, you can't see my screen. Please, if anyone can see my screen, just please confirm so I will know it's not from my end. You can see my screen, please. Okay. So I believe maybe it's from your end. If you can't see my screen, you can maybe leave the meeting and rejoin again. Maybe it's a network issue from your end. Just try to rejoin. Okay, let me open it. It's from Harry. Yes. Yeah, that was it. So if you can't see my screen, please just leave the meeting and maybe rejoin again. I believe it's maybe your network. Okay, like I was saying, I said the extension you need to install is Live Server. What this extension does is that it helps to render your page. So, when you are writing, like last time when we were writing our HTML code, we have to save and go to our web browser, reload the page before we'll be able to see the changes that we've made. Okay. But with the help of this extension, you really don't have to go to your page to reload to see before you see the changes you've made to your HTML document. Okay. So this live server helps to automatically reload your web page so that you see those changes immediately as you are editing your HTML document. Okay. So for instance, now let's come back here and let's say, hello. You see, as I'm typing or as I'm making changes to my HTML document, you see the changes immediately on your web page. Okay. You see the changes immediately on your web page. So that's the help of this extension. It helps to fasten your development process. So it saves you time, the time you need to go back to your web browser to reload the page before you'll be able to see those changes. This extension eliminates that delay. Okay. So I believe that's clear. Maybe I will just drop a screenshot of the extension so you know the particular extension to install. Okay. You're welcome.
How do I put my lights on?
It's all right. It's the activation. Then restart your VS Code. First restart. Close and open it. It's still on there. Supposed to be there. Once try to split. Just split and start. So that said, let's look at CSS. Like I said, the meaning for CSS, it stands for cascading style sheets. Okay, and it's what we use to style the content on our web page. Use CSS to style the content of your web page. For instance, let's say you want to make a text big, you can use CSS to do that. If you want to make, with CSS, you'll be able to make your paragraph. I know this does not make sense, but with CSS, you'll be able to increase the size of your paragraph text. You can increase it to look like the headings. Okay, that's the power of CSS. So, and there are different ways you can add CSS to your web page. Okay, there are different ways you can add CSS to your web page. You can either use inline CSS, internal CSS, or external CSS. These are the three main ways you can add CSS to your web page. You can use inline CSS, internal CSS, or external CSS. What do I mean by the inline CSS? The inline CSS, it works this way. It's when you write your CSS code inside your HTML elements. Okay, That's what inline CSS means. For instance, let's come to this our H1. These are H1 here where we have hello dev next gen quotes. Okay, you can actually write your CSS inside your HTML code. Okay, and you can do that by saying style. You say style, let's change the color. Let's say red. Okay, this is CSS. Right now, we have been able to add inline CSS to this our H1 tag here. And you can see the color has changed from black to red. You can change it to any color, whichever color you want. You can say instead of red, let's say blue. You can change it to blue. Okay, so that is inline CSS. Inline CSS is when you write your styles inside your HTML element or your HTML tag. Okay, like this paragraph now, let's say we want to change this paragraph. You can come here and say color, or rather style. Then you say color, because we want to apply color to it. Let's say we want to change this color to brown. You can see our paragraph has been changed to brown, or let's use green. You can see our paragraph text has been changed to green. That's because we've applied inline CSS to this particular paragraph tag or this particular paragraph element. Okay. You can also change the size. It's not only the color you can change. You can change the size. You can change the font weight. Just like that. You can change many things. Okay. Depend on what you want to achieve. Let's say want to change the font size to, let's say, 30 pixels. You can see we have increased the size of our text. Okay, we have changed this text now of this paragraph to 30 pixels. Okay, that's px. We have increased it. We can also change the let's say we want to make it bold. You can say font weight. You can say 700 or let's say 800. You can see we have make our paragraph text to be bold. Okay, so this is how you apply inline CSS. Inline CSS, you write it inside your HTML tag or your HTML element. And when you are applying inline CSS, it only applies to that particular element you are working on. You can see we have other paragraphs in our page, but this style that we have applied to this paragraph is not affecting this other paragraph. That's because we have only applied the style to this particular HTML element. Okay, so is that clear? If that's clear, you can react with the emoji in the chat. Okay, that's good. So this is for inline CSS. Another way of applying CSS is also the internal CSS. The internal CSS, this is when we apply the CSS not inside our HTML element, but rather inside our HTML document. Remember when I said those things you don't want to be displayed on your web page, like your CSS, you can add that inside your head tag or inside the head tag. Okay, you can add that inside the head tag. So this is where we apply the internal CSS. We can come to this head tag and you type in the style tag. Style tag, you open and close the style tag. Okay, this is the style tag, the opening and the closing. Remember, the closing always has a /. Okay, so in between this opening and closing, of the tag, now this is where you type or you write your CSS code. Okay, for instance, let's remove this this style that we've added here, and let's use the internal style to style our text. So let's come here and we can say H1 because we want to style this H1. H1 followed by the curly brackets. You open and close the curly brackets. Then in between the curly brackets, you write your CSS value. Okay, color. We want to change the color to blue. You can see that this style that we've added here has been applied to our H1. So this is another way you can add your CSS, just like the way we did now for the H1. We can also do for the paragraph. We just type in the name of the tag, which is P, followed by the curly brackets, and we can say color. Let's say red. And you can see our paragraph is now red. You might be wondering, if you look at this other paragraph, now this red has also been applied to this other paragraph. That is because we are using the internal CSS. We are not using the inline CSS. So one difference between the inline CSS and the internal CSS is that with the inline CSS, the style that are being applied inline will only affect that particular HTML element. Okay, it will only affect that particular HTML element. Like when we apply the inline CSS here on this tag, it only affected this particular paragraph tag or paragraph element. It did not affect this other element. But now that now that we are applying it internally, it's affecting all the paragraph element that we have on our web page. That's why you see that this second paragraph is red. Okay, so Mr. What's the name? Mr. Abubakar, you can go ahead with your question if you have any.
I can't see your screen right from when you begin the class till now. I can't see your screen. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please, if any of you
Yes,
guys.
I won't be able to see.
Okay, I believe maybe it's from your hand, because others can see my screen. Maybe what I would suggest you do, just leave the call and try to join again. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
I
please
think
just.
I can.
Okay, you can see
now.
it now.
Right now, it's just showing now.
Okay. Maybe it's the network.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
But it has left again. It is blank now. I don't know why it's always like that. If I see it for a few seconds, it just go blank again. I don't know what's causing it.
It might be your network. Maybe your network connection.
So what can I do now?
Maybe the connection is not stable, but I believe the class is being recorded.
Okay. Let me just leave and join.
Yeah, I believe the class is being recorded. So hopefully, maybe at the end of the class, you'll get a link to, so you can rewatch the video. Okay. Okay, so let's proceed. Like I was saying, I said the main difference between your inline CSS and the internal CSS is that when you apply the internal CSS to a particular element, a particular tag. Hello, you can please mute your mic.
Okay, sir. Thanks, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. I hear you.
Okay. So I said the main difference between the inline CSS and internal CSS is that hello, Miss. Mute your mic.
Oh.
Okay. So as I was saying, the main difference between the internal CSS and inline CSS is that when you apply the inline CSS to a particular HTML tag, it only affects that particular element that you've applied that CSS to. It does not affect all the elements on the page. But if you are using the internal CSS to apply style to a particular HTML tag, it will affect all the elements on that particular web page. Okay, so I believe that's clear. So these are the ways you apply CSS to your web page. The other way to apply CSS to your web page is called the external CSS. Okay, that's when you create a separate file. You can create a separate file where you write your CSS codes, okay, and you link that particular file to the document you want to apply the style to. Okay, so these are the three ways you can apply CSS to your web page. You can use the inline CSS, internal CSS, and the external CSS. Okay. And when applying CSS to your HTML documents, let's just do the external CSS first. So to do the external CSS, what you just need to do, you can create a new file. Let's call this file, let's say, lesson 1.css. Remember, when we are creating our HTML file, we use the extension .html. Okay. When creating your CSS file, you use the extension .css. That's the extension for CSS. Use the name of the file followed by the extension, which is .css. That's the extension for CSS file. Okay. So this is where we'll be writing our CSS file if we want to use the external CSS. So we can just come here and let's remove our CSS code from here. Let's cut it, and you can see the styles have been removed from our page. We come here and we paste our style right here. So right now we've added our CSS file to our external file. But if you look at our web page, you see that the style is not being applied on the web page. That's the reason, because we've not linked our CSS file to our HTML documents. Okay, so how do we do that? We have to go back to our HTML documents. Instead of adding the style tag, we need to add the link tag. Okay, we need to add the link tag, and this is the link tag. This is the link tag. Okay, and we are going to add a reference to our CSS document. Okay, if you have installed the live server, once you have installed it, what you just need to do is you come to your HTML document, you right click. Okay, once you right click, you see an option here that says open with live server. Is that clear? Okay, you just open with live server and it will open on your web page. Okay, Mr. Isaiah, you can go ahead if you have a question. Or it was just a mistake. Okay, so what we want to do now is to link our CSS document to our HTML document. So what we do is we use the link tag. This is the link tag, and in this href attribute, this is where we specify the path to our CSS file, just like we will specify the path when you are linking an image or when you are adding an image to your web page. So we specify the path. We just say, since our HTML and CSS document, they are in the same folder. We just say the name of the CSS file, which is lesson1.css. And you can see the web page now that the styles has been applied to our documents. Okay, but if, for example, now let's create a folder, we want to put our CSS file in a different folder from our HTML file. So let's create a folder and call that folder CSS. Remember, a folder is different from a file. A folder is just like a where you can put in your files. Okay, so we want to create a folder called CSS and want to move our CSS file inside that folder. So our CSS file is no longer in the same folder with our HTML file. Okay, so we'll come back to our HTML. Instead of saying lesson1.css directly, we are going to specify the path, which is / use the dot / CSS / lesson1.css. We've added this dot and / because our file is not in the same location with our HTML file. Just like when you are adding image, if your image is in a separate folder with your HTML document, you need to specify the path to that folder first. That's what we've done here. Okay, / the name of the file. So you can see our CSS styles has been applied to our page, and you can see the effect on our page. Okay, so these are the ways you add CSS or you link CSS to your web page. You use the inline CSS, internal CSS, and the external CSS. So if there's any question, you can ask your question right now before we proceed. If you have any question. You have any question?
Okay, thank you, sir. My question is, would this, I don't know if this class is being recorded, so maybe after here we can still go back to it again.
Okay, yes, the class is being recorded.
All right, sir.
Yeah, so hopefully after the class you get a link to the video. Okay, yeah,
You shared the link for the last class.
yes, it was posted in the channel. Yes, it was posted on the channel. Not directly in the WhatsApp group. It was posted in the channel. Yes. Okay, what I'll do, maybe after this class, I will also maybe I will share the link in the class so you can join the channel. In the channel, the previous classes have been posted there.
Lastly, for the CSS, is it a new text file open or is it a new file?
The CSS is actually not a text file in the sense that the extension ends with .css. So go to new file, create a new file. No, open your project folder first. That's side.
Yeah.
Yes. So create a new file there and give it a name that ends with .css. Yeah. Yes. So that's your CSS file. Yes. It will reflect on the web page. This is the title here on the web page. Yeah.
Can I see the CSS?
Okay. So if you have any question, you can unmute your mic and speak.
Why add a new text file again? Because I noticed that after this, like a folder now.
Yes.
Mine is not showing as a folder.
Okay. Like I said, to stay organized, if you are adding a CSS to your project, you can create a folder that will contain all your CSS file. Just like the way when we added image to our project, we created a folder to contain all our images. Okay. So instead of mixing up your HTML and CSS file together, you can create a folder that will contain, you don't have to delete it. You can just move it inside the folder. So create a new folder now. I call that folder CSS. And you move it inside. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. This folder you are creating is inside your images. If you look at this folder, it's inside your images folder. So once you want to create folder on this main directory, you click outside and click on the plus folder. Just call it CSS. So you can move the CSS file inside. Just for it to drag. So let's click on the drag. It's inside your CSS folder.
Yeah, I noticed that when you're on my own open, added this meta stuff.
Yes.
That's a demo.
You can leave it. You can leave it.
So can I see your reference? How you link it?
Okay.
You said they are what?
Those are just their meta tags. So meta tags, they are used to add like a description. It's mostly it's not being seen. Like I said, those things that are inside the head tag, they are not being seen on your web page. For instance, you can use the meta tag to add a description to your document, your HTML document. Search engine, for instance,
Sir, see the nice work I did for you now.
please, Mr. Francis,
What else, sir?
your mic is not muted. I don't know if you have a question.
No. Sorry, let me mute it now. I'm sorry, sir.
Okay, no problem. So the meta tags, they are used to add description to your web page. For instance, like search engine, there's something called SEO, which is search engine optimization. If you want to optimize your website or your web page for search engine, so it will rank on search engine, you need to add meta description to your web page. So this search engine, what they normally do is that they read your meta description and they will have an idea of what your web page is about, okay, or what that particular website is about. Okay, the link for the first class, what I'll do, I'll share the link to the channel that it was posted on. The channel is actually is a WhatsApp channel, and the classes, the recordings for the classes, they are posted in that channel. So I will share it in the group again. Maybe after this class, I will share the link in the group. Yes, live server, you can download it. No, it's on your extension. Yes, your VS Code extension. Yes. Okay. Thanks.
But I noticed that even my live server, they have to save it before it shows.
Yes, you have to save your documents.
But this is your own, you are not saving. As you type
It will save. I have something like auto save.
Okay.
It will just save automatically. Once I just move, it just save automatically.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it
But
that all
the
of them
thing
are
is,
coming?
with live server, you don't have to reload your web page before you see the changes.
Okay.
But if you
Okay,
don't have
just
live
once I
server,
save, okay.
yes, once you save, it will just
I noticed
automatically. Yes. You can use this one. Yes.
So is it possible now for me to do external, yes, external that will be done, and then let's say for example now it picks all my paragraphs and makes them red. I can now come to and I want one particular paragraph to be like blue, and I now come to do in style, in line for that one.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
This is not the best way to style your elements. Okay. There's something called ID and classes. Okay. So I just want everyone to be clear with the method of styling. We have the inline styling, the internal styling and external styling. Okay. But when styling your classes, I don't know if anyone still has a question. That's those that are online. If you have a question, Mr. I really don't know how to pronounce this name. You saying, I don't know if you have a question. Your hand is raised. Mr. Hussein, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but if you have a question, you can unmute your mic and ask. Let me see the messages. Okay, you said I need the link for the first class. Okay, I will send the link to the first class after this meeting. My link to the CSS isn't working. Okay, if your link to your CSS isn't working, firstly, I would like to know, is it that you are using the internal CSS or the external? If your CSS isn't working, Mr. Miracle, you can unmute your mic and ask, so I understand you better. Okay, external. So what you need to do is that ensure that the path, I don't know if you can see my screen, but just look at it, ensure that the path or the location of your CSS file is specified correctly. And one thing I noticed is that when you are naming your HTML, your CSS, or your JavaScript files, there are some things you should take note. Always try to avoid spaces. Don't add spaces when naming your files. It might cause issues. Okay, sometimes you notice that maybe at some point your CSS might be working, but maybe at some point it might not be working. Spaces can cause issues like that. For instance, let's say I want to create a CSS file or an HTML file. I can just say class, I add space, then one.html. This is not the right way to name your HTML file or your CSS file, whichever files you are working with. Make sure that you don't add spaces. That space can cause issues. So check if the name of your CSS file contains space and try to remove the space. One way you can remove the space is, for instance, let's say I want to name this file class 1, which is a 2-word. I can just say class, then I capitalize the 1, O-N-E, 1. But I make sure that these letters, they are together. Okay, or I can use the hyphen or underscore, class, hyphen, or underscore 1. But make sure they are not, there's no space in your name. Okay, so please check that, Mr. Miracle, check to ensure that your file has, the name of your file has no space in it.
Yeah. My file name has no space. But sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. It doesn't have any space, and I created it the same way. This was a new file you created or a new folder. Sorry.
I created a folder, then I created a folder called CSS. Then inside that folder, I created a file called lesson1.css.
Okay. I just created a file. Let me create a folder first. I'll try it.
No, you can actually create a file and link it.
Okay. Is the linking description different?
Okay. Your link description, what you should be concerned about is your href attribute. That's what points to your CSS file. So try to cross-check that. Or maybe you can just post your linking in the group. Let me see, so I can just go through it.
Okay. Come on.
Okay, let's just recap what we've learned so far. I said adding your CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and it is what we use to style our web page. You can either style your web page maybe by changing the colors, changing the size of your text, things like that. Okay. So just understand that CSS is used to style your web page. Okay. And with our CSS, we can either link our CSS to our web page, either using the inline styling, internal styling, or external styling.
Okay, so I posted it on the group.
Yeah, I've seen it. Check your folder structure to ensure that your CSS file, which is lesson 1, is in the same folder as your HTML file. If it is, just remove the / and the dot before it and save. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah. So as I was saying, we have the inline styling whereby you write your styles inside your HTML element. For instance, you can come here and say style, then you can change the color to, let's say, red. Okay. We'll change the color now. From what we have here, we'll change the color to red. And you might be wondering, okay, since we have H1 here, and right here we are specifying red, it means that this style is overwriting this one we have here. Why? Is because with this style, we are more specific that we are talking about this particular H1. Unlike this one, with this style here, we are not too specific because there might be other H1 on this page. You understand? But with this inline style, it means we are more specific that we want to change the style of this particular H1 to be red. So inline styles normally overrides external style. You understand? So that's one thing you should also take note of. Inline styles will overwrite your external styles because your inline style is more specific than your external style. Okay. So like I was saying, you can do the inline style, you can do the internal style whereby you write your styles inside your head tag. You can write the styles inside the head tag, H1, and you say the color, you can specify the color here as well. Okay. Or you can do the external styling. You can do the external styling just like what we've done here. Okay. So like I was saying is take for instance now, let's say you want to have different styles on your web page. You don't want all your paragraphs to be red. You want some paragraph to be red while you want some to be blue. You understand? Things like that might happen when you are designing a website or you want to create a web page. Okay. So how do you do that? That's why we use classes and IDs. We use classes and IDs. Let me create a comment here. Classes or IDs. Use classes or IDs to specify the particular element you want to style. Okay. So let's practicalize that for now. We can come to this our heading or this paragraph rather. We can say, let's call this one a class. Let's give this class let's just give it a name called learning. We're giving it a name called learning because it has this learning in it. Okay, so let's just call it learning. And let's come to this other paragraph here where we have select your track. Or let's create another paragraph here. Let's come here and say paragraph. Okay. So this is another paragraph now. Let's give this paragraph a different tag. Class. Let's call this lorem. We're giving this a class called lorem because it has lorem here. Okay. So let's go back to our CSS. Let's remove these styles we had there before. And you can see our our page now has returned to black. Okay, but right now we don't want to style all our paragraph. We want to style a particular paragraph. So that's why we added a class to it. So one of the class name is learning, while the other is Lauren. So let's come here. To start a particular class, we use the dot. You first of all type dot followed by the name of the class, which is learning. Okay, learning. You use the dot followed by the name of the class, which is learning, just like the class we use here, learning. Okay, then followed by the style. So let's say we want to change the color. Let's change this color to green. You can see only this paragraph now, the style is being applied to just only this paragraph here. Okay, then if we go to the next class, which is Lauren, we want to change the color for Lauren to be red. You can see these are both paragraphs, but we've applied different styles to each of the paragraph. We've applied green to the first paragraph, then we've applied red to the second paragraph. And this other paragraph here is not being styled because we didn't apply style to any of this paragraph. Okay, so this is one way you can apply styles to your HTML elements. You can use classes or you can use IDs. So let's use IDs. Instead of using class for this second one, let's use ID. Okay, and let's change the ID to Lauren. Okay, so instead of classes now, remember we are using ID for this second paragraph. So instead of dots, we are going to use the pound sign, which is known as, you can say, hash. Okay. So we are using the pound sign to target IDs. But if you are targeting a class, just like what we have here, this is a class. Why? This is an ID. Okay. If you are targeting an ID, use the pound sign or this hash. Did I even call it Naira? Okay. Use this sign to target IDs. Why use dots to target class? You can see the styles we specified now for this ID has been applied here. Why the one we specified for this class has been applied here. So right now you might be thinking, okay, instead of, since we can use classes to target a particular element and we can also use ID, why not just stick with one? Okay, I'll tell you that you use ID if you want to target a particular element. Okay, use ID if you want to target a particular element on your web page. But use classes if you want to target multiple elements. For instance, classes is recommended when you want to target, let's say you want to create reusable styles. Okay, let's say, for instance, let's make this, okay, since learning now, the class learning will specify the color to be red. It means any element, let's remove this H1. Any element we add this class to, any elements, as far as the text, any element we add this class to, the color will be green. So let's copy this class and add it to our H1. You can see our H1 text has changed to green. Let's come to this H2 here, user registration. We add the class learning. Our H2 now is green. Okay, so you use classes, and we have just specified just one style here for the learning. Okay, so you use classes when you want to target multiple elements on your web page. Okay, but use ID if you want to target a particular element on your web page. So is that clear?
So you saying you copy this ID now, so when you
Yes.
copy class for learning, I
Yes.
say it's not work.
If you
Copy this ID now, this
Yes.
full line, and replace it in maybe somewhere else. I say it's not going to work.
Yes, it will work. Let me show it. Let's use it for, Let's create another paragraph. Look at it. It will work. But it's recommended that when you are using ID, you only use it for just because ID is more like a unique identity.
Okay.
You understand? But class can be reusable. Yes. So that's just the recommendation of. So is that clear? Let me know if you have any question. Those online. You have any question? Are you following? I'm not following. Okay. Hopefully we will recap. If you have any question, you can unmute your mic and ask. Yes.
Okay. The main that is for scan.
Yes, for scanning.
So you come to the house.
Yes. So let me explain to you again. What CSS does is not only to style your text. You can use CSS to style your image. You can use it to style even your buttons. Okay. So CSS is in charge of the styling of your web page. Any element you add to your web page, you can use CSS to style it. It's not only your text. Okay. And when you want to add CSS, like I said, you can either add it inside the head tab. You understand? You can add it inside this head tab. This is the opening and the closing of the head tab. So you can add your CSS here. Yes. Just click on enter first so that will take you to the main line. Style. Yes. So this is the opening and the closing of our styles. So in between the opening and the closing, this is where you write your CSS code. So for instance, if you want to style your H1, you type H1 here, write H1. Then followed by the curly brackets. You know the curly brackets? Yes. So in between this curly bracket now, this is where you write your styles that will be applied to that particular element you are targeting.
Follow.
Yes. Yes, followed by the value. So when you save now and check your web browser, you see the effects. I think you know if it's using a live server. Have you installed the live server? Open the live server. If you open into the live server, you don't really have to come to refresh your page before you see those changes. So you need to preview your work faster. So this now is called internal CSS because you are writing it inside your HTML document. But the one you write inside your HTML element is called what? Yes, that's called inline. Then why the one you create a separate file? It's called external CSS. So you can either use the inline, internal, or external. So for instance, let's say you want to style this H2 using inline styling. So style the H2 using inline styling. Yes. No, then you specify the Just type numbers. Take picture. Yes. So there are lots of uses, and with time you get, just as you practice, you get to, is the meeting still like,
So I have a question.
looks like the meeting is okay, still like, okay, you have a question,
Yeah.
you can go ahead.
On my CSS,
Yeah.
page, when I type dots or Vera sign hash,
Yes.
I'm not seeing any pop-up on my classes or my IDs. I think when you
Right.
use dots, the
Okay.
styling you did
Yeah.
was showing, but I'm not seeing anything like that.
Okay. There are some extensions you will install on your PC or your VS Code. It will give you suggestions. Okay. But though it's not recommended, if you are learning, it's not recommended that you install such extensions, because sometimes it might just be giving you those recommendations without you really knowing why it's bringing out those recommendations. Okay. So it's better you type everything from scratch so you get to understand or get to be used to it. Okay.
I have a question. Like this one, can I borrow multiple styles again? Can you say?
Yes. Just like after doing the font size, you can also do, let's say, color. You can do color. That's it. You can apply multiple styles. Just like I've applied color here on learning. I can come to this part now. I can say font size, and I will say, let's say 30 pixel. Just to increase the size. You can see it. To apply multiple, I can even say text decoration, underline. You can see it now. I've underlined the text. The why it's applying to all of this is because, remember, I added this learning class to this, and this. That's why it's applying to all of this. But if I should come back and let me remove the learning class from, where is it again? Let me remove it from this. This, where is it again? And this. You can see that it's only being applied to this particular element. So basically, you can also style your input elements, just like the way you style your text. You can style your input elements, you can style the buttons. Okay, so let's do that. Let's look at one of the input elements here. Remember, the first time we styled our text here, we used the name of the tag, just like paragraph, H1. The same way, you can style your input using the name of the tag. Let's say input. I can see padding. Let's say 10 pixels. What padding does is that it adds space. You can see I've added space to it. I can say border. Let's say 2 pixel solid black. And let's increase it so that you see. You can see it's border. Let's reduce 1 pixel. Border is just like adding, you know what border is now? Adding like a line around the element. That's what I've done here. So you can basically use your CSS to style any element on your web page. Let's style this button, for instance. Okay.
You might want to learn attributes on the CSS because you link CSS to the
Yes, I've linked my CSS to it. But if I'm writing the styles, let's say I don't want to use external styles. Let me comment this. And comment, let's say some codes. Let's say you don't want to use that particular code, or you don't want the code to have any effect on your web page. You can comment that code. You can see it turn to green. It means this code now will not have any effect on our web page. You can use the control and slash to comment, or you can type it manually, the / followed by your asterisk, then the asterisk, then the /. You can type it manually, but the shortcut is to use control and slash. Or I think on Mac, it should be command and slash.
At what point do you do this?
Let's say, for instance, you don't want to use a particular line of code. Let's say I don't want to style this input element, and this is where I wrote the code. I can just highlight it. I use control and slash. Yes, because I might need it later on. Yes. And also comment. You can use comment to describe what your code is about. Like here now where I added a comment, classes or IDs, so that someone reading my code will understand that I'm talking about using classes and IDs. Same inside your HTML, you can add comments inside your HTML as well to describe what your code is about. So that, let's say, for instance, now someone is reviewing your code, the person will get to understand, okay, this is what this person is trying to achieve with this particular line of code. Okay. So, like I said, this button, let's style this button. This is the button. You can give it a class or an ID. Let's give it a class and let's call it my button. Okay, Mr. Hussein, if you have a question, please go ahead. Are you there? Can you all still hear me? If you can hear me, you can, okay, yeah.
Are all of these classes?
No, those are comments. These are comments.
Sorry, comment.
Yes, they are comments. They are comments. So comments can be used to describe your code, to make it readable. So let's style our button. We gave it a class now called my button. Remember I said when naming your files and also when giving classes, don't add spaces to your class. Because if I should add space now, instead of my with the hyphen button, I just said my space button. This will be two classes. I've given this particular element two classes because you can actually give your element two classes or multiple classes. Okay, so I've given this element now two classes because of this space. So if I want to style it now, then I now say dot my button. It won't work. It will work now because it's more like I'm using this my to target button. This button now is not targeting this class, but rather it's targeting this button element. So just like the way we style this our H1, H2. Okay. But if you want to give your element a class, make sure to remove any space. You can either use this my hyphen button or you can say my button, something like this. So let's do that. Let's copy the name. Let's come here. Since the class we'll be using dot my button. Okay, we can add padding. Remember, I said padding is used to create space inside the element. Padding, let's say 10 pixels. You can see it has added space inside our element. And if you look at this button now, you won't really know that this button is clickable because it's showing this arrow. So we can do that by setting the cursor pointer So when you set the cursor to pointer, you can see it will change. That's the power of CSS. You can see. You can also style the color. Let's say background color. Let's change it to, let's use black. Okay. Then since we are using black now, we can see the text. Just like as you are using as you are writing CSS, you get used to it that, okay, for instance, now when we want to style text, we use color. But when we want to style the background, we use background color. You understand? So now we have changed this button now from gray to black. You can also change it to red. You can see it. And there's this border or outline. You can remove that. You can say border to none. You can see we've removed the border. That's it. So that's the power of CSS. Use it to style your web page. You can use it to style every element on your web page. So I would like to know so far, is there any question? Is there any question? If there's no question, let's proceed. We will definitely get the recording of this class, so you can go through it later on. Okay. So this is CSS. Let's just recap. I don't want us to be too fast so that those that are not following, you can easily catch up with it. I said we can start our HTML documents in 3 ways: the inline CSS, internal CSS, and the external CSS. And so far, it is recommended that you use the external CSS. Why? Is because if we are to style our HTML elements using inline CSS, you will notice that at some point, just as for now, we are just doing just simple styles, okay? But if you have, let's say, a more complex website to design, you will notice that your CSS code will start mixing up with your HTML code, and it will make your code confusing to read, okay? So that's why it's recommended that when you are styling your HTML document, use the external CSS so that you don't end up mixing your CSS and your HTML content together. Okay, so basically this is for CSS. What I would suggest you do, I really don't know about your portal. If your portal is, if there are any content now on your portal. Because one thing about writing codes is that once you are watching a tutorial, you feel maybe, okay, you've understood everything that is being taught, okay? But when you are asked or you want to really do it by yourself, is my screen still sharing? Let me know if my screen is still sharing. Okay. So when you want to do it by yourself, you notice that you might be finding some things difficult. So why I'm saying this is that I just want to encourage you all to keep practicing. Okay. With time, you get used to all of these HTML and CSS. Okay. So just try to, you can just try to think about something. There's AI, but I will not suggest you start using AI to write your code. But you can ask AI, okay, I'm currently learning HTML and CSS. Can you give me like a beginner-friendly design that I can do to practice my skill? Okay. ChatGPT will just give you, okay, design a form or design this type of page. You get an idea. So with that, you'll be able to practice, give yourself exercise to do. So that way you'll be able to understand how to really use HTML and CSS when you are designing. Okay. So with HTML and CSS, or rather with CSS, there are a lot of things you can do, honestly. There are a lot of things. Okay. you can also, CSS is also in charge when it comes to creating responsive designs. When I say responsive design, I mean design that will look good in both mobile screen and also on laptops. Okay, whichever device you are using to access that particular website or that particular platform, the design is going to look good on those platforms. So you can also use CSS to do that, and it's called responsive designs. Okay, I'll just throw some light on that. But I really don't want us, for now, I don't want us to go deep so that we don't complicate things. But maybe with time, as you get to practice using HTML and CSS, you get to understand what we are talking about. So let me just go through this note and see what we have covered. We talked about selectors. So if there's any question, those online, if you have any question, you can please go ahead. You can unmute your mic and ask. Okay. Okay, if there's no question, let's talk about someone is no question. Okay. If there is no question, let's talk about typographies. Let's talk about typographies. Typography has to do with text. So we've done a little on that. It has to do with text. Okay. For instance, if you look at most websites, you notice that just like you will have our text here, some of their text might just be italics, some might be bold, some might be light, things like that. They have to do with typographies, which is changing the style of your font. Okay. And how do you change your font style? Let's move on like this so don't get distracted. So how do you change your font style? Let's take a particular element here. Let's use this paragraph as an example. Remember, it's a class, so we use the dot and we open our curly brackets. Okay. So what we want to do now is we want to change our font style. Firstly, we've learned how to change the color of our font. Okay, so let's just do that. Color, let's say red. Okay, then font weight. What this font weight does is that, just like the name, it helps to maybe make your text bold or make it light. Okay, it can make your text bold or it can make it light, depending on the value you set. So you can say font weight. You can either set it to, let's say, 800. Okay, this will make it bold. If you look at this text now, it's bold. Or you can make it, let's say, let's use 100. And you can see now it's light. So you can use the font weight, just like the name, the weight of the font. You can either make it bold or you can make it light. That's what this property does. Okay. Then also we have the line height. You might not see the effect on this, but let's create a longer paragraph so you can see the effects. Let's use 50. Okay. So we created a longer paragraph. So let's use line heights. Let's say 12 pixels. So what the line height does is that it adjusts the spacing between the text in the paragraph. You can see now the text, they are more close to each other. The height is too close and it's not readable. So you can actually adjust the height of your text So you can say 20 pixel, you can say 25, you can even say 30 pixel. Depend on what you want to achieve. Okay, depend on what you want to achieve. So you can see these are different styles that we can do on our websites. Okay, and we can achieve this using CSS. You can achieve all of this using CSS. There's also something called text decoration. Okay, you can either use, let's use underline. You can see to make our text underline. So there are a lot of them you can use. There are a lot of them. Text decoration, then let's say font style. Font style. You can use italics. You can use italics. You know how to do italics text, just like those type of text that are a bit slanted. Okay, that's italics text. Let me remove this underline, this line so you can see it clearly. So you can see it now. We'll change the style of this particular text. We'll change it to italics. Okay, so there are a lot of things you can do with CSS, and these are what we have been doing now. They are all related to typography. And one other thing, there's something called font family. Okay, what the font family does is that it helps you to change the type of font. It helps you to change the type of font you want to use. So for this particular paragraph that we have given this learning class, you can see now we have changed the font, and the font is looking different from what we have on these other paragraphs. Okay, let me do this one. You can see now that this font is different from this one. That's because we changed the font family. If you look at some websites, you see different types of fonts on their website. They basically don't use this default font. Okay, so this is how you set the type of font you want to use. Okay, this is how you set the font. Use the font family followed by the value. Okay, there are different types of fonts. Let's try that again. Font family. You can see different types of font that you can use. You can also use online fonts, which is you can get fonts from Google and add it to your website. Okay, but these are the ones you have available on our local system. But these are different types of fonts.
So you know, you can use them. You only use commercial fonts.
Okay, yes. Like on Google Fonts, once you go to Google, I think it's fonts.google.com. Once you go to their website, you see different free fonts that you can use for your website. But one thing you need to also ensure is that make sure that your fonts are readable. Okay, make sure that your fonts are readable. Most times, as a website designer, you might be working with UI UX designer. Okay, and after they've designed the layout of the website, they will also tell you the type of font to use. Okay, so once they have sent you the design, you see the type of font that they've used on that particular design. So you look at the font and you try to use that particular font. Okay, for instance, let's say they are using Times New Roman. You don't have to use any other font. You have to look for Times New Roman to use on that particular design, so that the design matches with the Figma or whatever file you have been sent. Okay, so these are all related to typography. Typography has to do with the text on your website. Okay, so let me see, what have we not talked about? We've talked about padding. Okay, talked about padding. Like I said, padding is used to add space within an element. Padding is used to add space within an element. Just like the input element we have here. Let's go back. Let's use the inputs. Let's use inputs. There's something called padding. Padding is used to add space within the element or inside the element. On HTML, there's something called the box model. Okay, the box model. To explain that, this particular element, for instance, see it as a box, okay? See it as a box. Inside this element, if you want to add space inside the element, okay, you use padding. Padding, you can say 10 pixel. It will add space inside the element. But if you want to add space outside the element, use margin. Use margin, let's say margin 10 pixel. You can see we've added space outside our element. So you have to understand that as well. Padding is used to add space inside the element, while margin is used to add space outside the element. Okay. And one thing about padding is that there's something called, let me comment this one. Padding, we have padding left, right, top, and bottom. It all depends on where you want to add space. For instance, if I say padding bottom and I say 10 pixel, it will only add the space to the bottom. Then if I should say padding top, 10 pixel, it will only add the space to the top and bottom because I have specified padding top and bottom. But if I'm just specifying just only one value here for padding, let me comment this. Just like I said, padding 10 pixel, it will apply 10 to left, top, right, and bottom. That's what this particular value is doing. It will apply padding to left, top, right, and bottom. Okay. So for instance, it means right here you can supply 4 values. You can say 10 pixel, let's say 3 pixel, 2, or let's do this way so we can see the difference. Let's say 10 pixel, 20 pixel, 30 pixel, 40 pixel. So you can see it. So you can see it now. This 40 pixel is being applied to this part, which is the left-hand side of the screen. Okay. Then the top now is applying let's see. Let's change it back to 40 pixel. This 10 is applying to the top. Okay, 10 is applying to the top, 20 is applying to this part, 30 is applying to this bottom, and 40 is applying to this left-hand side. Oh, let me see. Let me just confirm. This thing can confuse you sometimes. Let's see again. Let's see. 10 pixel. Pixel, 0 pixel, 0 pixel, 0 pixel. So that we get it clear this time. Okay. Yeah. So you can see it now. This 10, first 10 is applying to the top. You can see the space at the top. So let's change this to 10. This second value is applying to the right-hand side. Okay. Then this third value is applying to the bottom. Okay. Then the fourth value is applying to the left. So how it works is that the first is the top, second is the right, third is the bottom, then the fourth is the left. So that is how it works. So you can supply 4 values to this padding. But if you are just supplying just one value as 10 pixel, it will apply it to top, right, bottom, and left. Okay, same as margin. Margin works the same way as well. There's margin top, margin bottom, margin left, margin right. Okay, so you can also supply 4 values to the margin. Let's do that. And that's it. Now we've supplied 4 value, just one value here. It's actually 4, but the rest are 0. So just giving the left hand side 10 pixel. You can see 30 pixels, you see that to shift from this element here, because margin is outside the element. Margin is being applied to outside the element. So if we can say margin top now, let's say 20, you can see now it's been applying the space outside the element. So what I want you to know is that margin is being applied to outside the element, while padding is being applied to inside the element. So I hope that is clear. Okay, so we'll be ending our class here and to continue next week. But if you have any question, you can also post them in the group. Okay. Then once the recording of this class is ready, I'll also share it in the group so you can watch and go through what you've learned. So is there any question? If there's any question, you can unmute your mic and ask. Okay, I believe there's no question, so I will end the meeting here, and you guys should all have a nice day. All right.
Thank you, sir.